It might be hard to believe, but Secret of the Mimic has been out for almost a whole month by this point, and speculation and theorizing has yet to settle down. Many questions still do remain, like the role of David and what is happening in Moon.exe. Unfortunately though, I won't be covering those two topics in really any detail today in this video, but it will be Secret of the Mimic focused, but it will act more as a sequel to my video on Glitchtrap, an update if you will, so I do recommend you check that out first. But in this video, I will not only be going over Glitchtrap, but also covering Burntrap's identity and the role and plan of Afton in the new story. Additionally, I will also explain the role of the Mimic in relation to Glitchtrap, their plan with Afton, and what's to come in the future, while also proposing a new alternative idea to Glitchtrap that could change everything, but also feel not too unfamiliar to things we have talked about before. However though, remember, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like it and leave a comment down below. Both immensely help out the channel and I would really appreciate it. And if you enjoy my content, you can subscribe and hit the bell for more updates. Now let's not waste any more time and get right into the theory. Starting off, we should first address a central question. Is Burntrap William or the Mimic? This is not going to take too long overall, as I do believe it's reasonably straightforward, more than you would usually think. The most popular prevailing thought in recent times about Burntrap is that it's the Mimic wearing the corpse of a random person dressed in a spring body suit, while pretending to be William Afton. The main reasons for this belief can, for the most part, be boiled down to similar claws and scratch marks in the Burntrap lair, alongside the belief that Afton died in a lake in the FNaFLore Fights books. Needless to say, the latter point is now known to be debunked due to Secret of the Mimic finally ending the book debate. Thank God, by the way. But what about the other two? Well, to save myself some time, I would like to play two clips from ID's Fantasy's videos, where she explains this exact point in detail.
As much as part shifting could account for some differences, there's a distinct difference between moving around the location of specific parts and swapping out an entire endoskeleton, especially when they could have easily kept most of Burntrap's model, subtracted the corpse and casing, and called it a day. After all, parts of Burntrap himself were made from the spring Bonnie model that was initially made for Help Wanted, so we know Steel Wool is willing to reuse models to connect characters visually. Why not do the same with the Mimic and Burntrap to make sure people knew they were meant to be the same character? Instead, pretty much every distinction that could be made between Burntrap and the Mimic seems to be made. I don't think that the theory that Glitchtrap and Burntrap are the Mimic trying to be William really holds up. I could understand it somewhat before the Mimic's appearance in Ruin, but considering the fact that the Mimic and Burntrap look absolutely nothing alike except for a single hand that only looks similar rather than the same, and despite claims to the contrary does not have markings that line up with Burntrap's flesh bits, I don't see how Burntrap could be the Mimic pretending to be William.
Both of her videos I referenced will be linked down below in the description. The first one is honestly one of the best videos on the subject, and is an inspiration for my videos on Burntrap and Glitchtrap, so I really do suggest, if you haven't already, to watch those as well. However though, turning back to Burntrap, there's also the scratch marks that belong to both Burntrap and the Mimic, but I don't believe that is all too strong of a point. As argued, the hands are already a similar reused asset, and it doesn't directly correlate Burntrap to the Mimic at all when you think about it, and it's only in that area. And we do know Burntrap was in a charging pod for some time, while the Mimic was sealed behind a concrete wall, according to Gregory.
That thing in the sinkhole tricked you. I really don't know what it is, but it's been trapped down here a really long time.
Not to mention, but we know by the point of security breach in Ruin, that Mexus was the security system of the whole Piecaplex, that he was designed to keep M2, the Mimic, contained and under boundaries. Yet with Burntrap, he never does anything to stop him or even contain him, as if Burntrap was not the one he was meant to contain. Hence, Burntrap can't be the Mimic, but rather Afton. Something really interesting to note as well is that Gibby once pointed out in the fight story Step Closer that Pete and Chuck play a game where they are the mage and the apprentice. They must gather the magical items and save the people from an evil wizard. Gibby had explained that this is an exact one-to-one parallel that foreshadows the entirety of the Stitch Wave storyline, Mage and the Apprentice being Jake and Andrew, the town being the Souls, and Afton being the evil wizard. If I can find it, I'll link his video down below, but the reason why this matters is that in the Tales story GGY, Gregory, who is possessed by Glitchtrap and goes by Rab or Dr. Rabbit, writes a fake story that seems oddly specific.
Tony quickly began to scan the opening of the story. He found the first change near the bottom of page 1. GGY was the wizard's most favored apprentice? Tony yelped when he read the line that had replaced Tony's description of GGY's high arcade game scores. Cool. Huh, Boots said. Rab came up with that. Keep going, it gets better. After reading the second page of the story, which described a corporate conspiracy that somehow reached another planet where the wizard resided, Tony's head began to throb when he saw his description of GGY's control over the animatronics had turned into an animatronic supervillain who went into battle with a tentacled monster. Tony was pretty sure his ears were emitting steam similar to what was swirling along the surface of the step he stood on.
If you can't tell where I'm going with this, Gregory was the wizard's favorite apprentice, Tails is a sequel to Fright's, and contextually the wizard should be Afton again. Gregory is Afton's favorite apprentice, Dr. Rabbit. Heck, it even talks about the Burntrap ending with an animatronic supervillain battling a tentacled monster. I think this clearly tells us that Burntrap is in fact Afton, since Afton is the wizard in Frights and should be in Tails as well. We shouldn't also discount the fact that the character encyclopedia, which by the way was made after Scott said he'll be more careful with the guidebooks, directly says near verbatim that Burntrap is William. It's one thing for Scott to miss minor errors like Bonnet and FNaF 3, but another thing for Scott to miss massive lore drops like this. So I do think it's pretty telling that he did approve it, likely because it is accurate information. With that in mind, Burntrap is William, and everything from his appearance and the context in which we find him would indicate this. Especially since fights never happened, his body would still be in the FNaF 6 location where we last saw him. Hey, Draz here. I'm adding this after I recorded and edited the rest, as I did forget one more thing. In Secret of the Mimic, we learn how mimics work. Through the storytime ending, we can see that mimics become locked in to a certain persona, and truly believe they are that person. We see that with M1 and Fiona and M2 with David, but also Edwin in a scrapped Secret of the Mimic ending where M2 becomes locked in to Edwin's profile. This means you have to do specific steps to cause a mimic to lock into a certain persona. This causes a problem for a mimic being Burntrap, as there's zero evidence at any point in the timeline for the mimic to have the chance to be locked into Afton's identity. We know that M2 was likely trapped beneath MCM for a very long time, perhaps decades, and it's very unlikely that merely being put into a VR game would cause him to lock into Afton's persona. Given how many things are in the indie games and the VR games, it doesn't really make sense. If it did, he should lock into Chica's identity, given how much more familiar he would be with Chica compared to anyone else. This very strongly reinforces that Burntrap cannot be the Mimic, since the Mimic never had the chance or would believe that it is William Afton. In simple words, if it looks like William, acts like William, talks like William, it's probably William Afton. That's all, returning right back to the video.
I should clear the path.
It is almost complete.
Good. We have evaded suspicion. Yet you must still eliminate staff.
It is already in motion. Everything is connected to my systems, and I am in complete control. Do not worry.
Okay, maybe that was a bit longer than intended, but now you see why it's very likely that William is Burntrap. But before we go into the deeper aspects of the theory, let's go back to Glitchtrap. As I explained in my Glitchtrap video, I argue why he's actually both Afton and the Mimic. That isn't changing, yet. However, I want to ignore Afton and focus on the Mimic for now. What role does the Mimic have as Glitchtrap beyond being the power source for him? Better yet, which Mimic is it? Secret of the Mimic dropped a massive reveal, the true Secret of the Mimic we were all waiting for. That secret being is that there's two Mimics. There's M2 or Mimic 2, the main Mimic that hunts us throughout Secret of the Mimic and Ruin, and M1 or F10-N4, the first mimic that locked itself into the persona of Fiona, Edwin's dead wife. As I explained in my video on the subject, M1 is the mimic deceiving you as dispatch, and it kills you in the bad ending in the van, or in the true ending it takes your data driver and leaves you to burn in the fire. This begs the question, which of these two mimics then is the one that's connected to Glitchtrap? Well, while many do assume it's M2, that's not really supported and lacks any real reason for M2 to ever lock onto an Afton persona. However, under Glitchboth, you don't need the mimic locking onto Afton's identity, they only need to be Afton's ally. And this most fits with one mimic, F10-in4, M1. Okay, let me elaborate on my reasoning here. Firstly, M2 is animalistic in all his appearances, even in Ruin. And while you could point out that in the DLC, he is a lot more clever with his Gregory impersonation, he is a lot more ruthless and less calculating than M1. M1 though is all of that. She's calculating, mostly patient, and also willing to murder whoever she needs. In the bad ending of the game, she opens the garage and moves the van. Afterwards, we are killed in the van and taken to R&D, where we are forced to participate in a recreation of Pizza Party from FNaFLore 1. If you remember, I pointed out before that M2 never had access to R&D till he followed you in the parachute ending. So this endo you see in the credits would have to be M1, which connects M1 to Glitchtrap since he's the one recreating Pizza Party, or should I say, she is the one. Likewise, the canonical ending, as I explained in my previous video, perfectly sets up Ruin. We activate Cradle, the program Nexus is for, and run from the mimic as the place collapses. M2 falls into a pit of molten something as the place falls apart, setting up perfectly what we see from M2 in Ruin. However, that means that M2 would have had zero ability to get scanned into anything, whether it be the VR game, AR, or the Pizzaplex. M1, on the other hand, escaped. She is the one who took the data driver of the M2 schematics, the thing she wanted from you the whole game, her main motivation. She would have been out and about for decades and would have been able to easily get herself scanned to all the systems of the Pizzaplex quite easily. Heck, adding on to that, the wires from her F10-in4 machine are already remarkably similar to the wires around the Pizzaplex, as if she's the one infecting all the systems. And we do know that Security Breach does have unsolved mysteries according to JTOP, which mainly relies on environmental storytelling. And as I'll discuss further in a future video, she closely parallels the Storyteller AI, which was the Mimic AI infecting all the Pizzaplex systems in the Tales books. My favorite piece of evidence to support this is in Ruin and FNaFLore 2 with Helpy. If you don't know, Helpy is to some extent Glitchtrap, and in Ruin, it's clearly the Mimic when his eyes turn yellow. But the question begs, is that M2 or M1? Let's return to Ruin. M2, while pretending to be Gregory at one point in the game, very briefly argues childishly with Helpy. We never had an answer for why he would argue with himself if it's both M2. Even the pause menu messages, for example, which do seem to be from the Mimic, act very separately from Gregory and are very fitting of Helpy in the game. And there's no real reason for this unless they're separate in some way, but we didn't know how that could be. It's not only that though. Helpy behaves near identically to M1 in Secret of the Mimic. M1 hijacks radios and has a signal jammer blocking communications, and while pretending to be Dispatch, she guides but also deceives Arnold throughout the entire game, while making silly remarks and dismissing all of Arnold's concerns or pleas. Helpy does the exact same thing. Helpy guides Cassie, but is deceptive, but makes humorous remarks and is highly dismissive of Cassie's concerns. Their personalities are identical with no exaggeration. What really sells this though is one detail. In Secret of the Mimic at the beginning, when you don't pick up the data driver, Dispatch gets increasingly upset and frustrated with you. Really frustrated.
It should be in the van. Richie slipped it in your toolbox during the last job. Just in case. Check your toolbox. Gotta be there somewhere. Keep looking. Just pick it up when you find it. Not a promising start.
Even if this is like the real Dispatch, M1 is copying this character. To support this, later in the game during the parachute ending, he gets really upset with you if you take too long to give the data driver, and especially if you activate parachute.exe and enter the vent.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
That area is off limits. Arnold, go back. Give me the data diver. Arnie, buddy, you're making a huge mistake. Don't do it. Think about what you're doing. You have made your choice. You are not going to make it out of here alive. You should have given me what I wanted and gone home. You did everything else that was asked of you. Why don't you trust me? I thought you might understand, but you're just like the others. Now it's your turn to play dress up. When he catches you, which one will he choose? Who are you deep down inside? Another worker bee? A bumbling bee? Perhaps a busy bee? In many ways, tonight has been a comedy of errors. A jester would suit you well. No, you did everything I asked up to this point. You were an obedient dog, a good dog. Then you bit the hand that fed you.
Helpy in Help Wanted 2 does the exact same thing. When you delay or ignore the fast force figures, his face becomes increasingly frustrated and upset with you on the projector, and the text displays a similar kind of frustration that F10-N4 has with you in Secret of the Mimic. You can't look at this and say to me with a straight face that this isn't the exact same in every way. Now, if that doesn't convince you, Secret of the Mimic reveals that in Moon.exe, Sun, aka M1, is also referred to as a witch in a dark forest. If that sounded very familiar to you, it's because it is. A witch in a dark forest is a direct confirmation that the Help Wanted 2 candidate story about a witch in a dark forest is about F10-N4 to some extent.
Now let me tell you a story about a young woman who, when she was little, was led into a dark forest by a witch, and almost eaten. She had fallen for the friendly voice without discernment, and was led astray. She had escaped before being thrown into the oven, but would have a scar for the rest of her life. When she had grown, she sought revenge on the witch, and entered the forest again willingly, this time with the confidence of age and experience. She was greeted at the mouth of the forest by a young boy who offered to help guide her through the darkness. She welcomed the help, and followed the young boy over the river, through the jagged trees, and toward a small house. "Come," the boy said. "Rest here before killing the witch." The young woman was tired, and would kill the witch in the morning. She followed the boy into the house. The oven door closed. The witch would finally have her meal.
And while I won't be going into any deep specifics about the story itself, the fact that the story is about M1 and we find it in Help Wanted 2 from Candy Cadet means that M1 must be relevant to the story of Help Wanted 2, which, in that case, should most fit as Helpy and by extension Glitchtrap, since we know the two are connected. Combine all these connections. Glitchtrap created Pizza Party, Helpy is also Glitchtrap, and Secret of the Mimic reveals that M1 is Helpy, recreating Pizza Party. Therefore, M1 is somehow related to Glitchtrap.
Soon we will uncover what was left behind. My creation will continue, and I will unite with my corporeal form.
And I will have my child return to me.
Yes, after I have achieved what I require.
Now that we established the Mimic aspect of Glitchtrap, we can proceed. What do we have now? Well, we have Afton and M1 as Glitchtrap, similar to the Agony from Frights. William is the appearance, personality, and central controller of Glitchtrap. However, it exists because of M1. M1 is the primary source of Glitchtrap's power. Without her, Afton is weak and frail. But what are the plans and motives of these characters? What exactly is the story here? This actually isn't all too complicated. Ask yourself this: what are William's motivations consistently across the timelines? If you answered eternal life and creating a massive amalgamation, you'd be correct. In the novels, it was a thing literally called the amalgamation. In Christ, it was the Agony, which was made out of a numerous amount of souls trapped in items by Eleanor and Afton. In the games, this was Molten Freddy, which perfectly matches the Tangle, a massive amalgam of wires and endoskeletons, with parts from the FNaF 6 animatronics and a Funtime Freddy-based head. It's precisely in the place where we would expect Molten Freddy to be, and if William survived, nothing stops Molten Freddy from surviving as well. The Tangle just looks like Molten Freddy if you fed it for years on end, something Afton would certainly do. And so if any of that is meant to tell us anything, Afton's goal is to grow the Tangle, experiment, and create his perfect family and amalgam, and gain true eternal life. If Afton AR from Special Delivery is meant to tell us anything, Afton as Glitchtrap was harvesting Remnant through the delivery service to hoard and collect Remnant for his plans, which would make sense if it were for himself and the Tangle. However, there is more to it. In Ruin, M1 and M2 share broadly a similar goal, to free M2 from concealment. However, the animatronics still try to kill Cassie, and we know the reason why they became hostile is because they got infected with the Glitchtrap virus. So why? If that was M1 or M2, why would either of them try to kill you before they get what they want? Unless, in this situation, Glitchtrap's goal isn't their goal. Glitchtrap/Afton wants to keep M2 locked down there, which is why Mexus in the modern day now takes the form of a black rabbit, alerting the infected animatronics to your location to kill Cassie. So Mexus in Ruin is on the side of Glitchtrap, while M1 and M2 want you to disable him. But why would Afton want this? Well, with Glitch both in mind, Afton would want to have leverage and control over M1, and keeping her son trapped down there is really good leverage. Also, releasing it would just cause him a ton of problems, so it likely relates to that as well. But what about M1? What's her goal? Well, this one is even simpler. Secret of the Mimic spells it out. She wants another David. She wants David back. She wants us to fix him too. And since many things have changed since Secret of the Mimic in 1979, she wouldn't want him trapped down there forever if she had the data diver. She would want to rescue him and redeem him, and Secret of the Mimic shows that she is willing to do whatever it takes to achieve this goal. Where it gets interesting though is in Help 1 or 2. As I point out in my Glitchtrap video, the Mimic betrays Afton in this game, and now in Secret of the Mimic, we have more of an apparent motivation. In Help 1 and 2, we help Glitchtrap, but not just Afton, M1 as well. I think this is pretty evident in the dialogue from Mr. Kippo, where she says, "It needs you, she needs you."
It needs you. She needs you.
Mr. Kippo also repeats a line said by the Mimic in Help 1, supporting the idea that Mr. Kippo is a Mimic speaking to you, but obviously it can't be M2.
Hello, can you hear me?
While it is likely that she here refers to Vanessa, we should also examine the cut Vanessa dialogue, as it does gleam light on what the story of Help 1 and 2 is meant to be. "You need to listen to me carefully. Don't help it escape. It's using you to finish where she left off. Only a small piece of his code remains. It is bound to the past. Find its memories and return. Bring him to me." If Vanny is the one speaking, who then is the she Vanny refers to? Well, it would have to be M1, who is already relevant to the game through at least the Candy Cadet story. This would mean the it and the his is referring to Glitchtrap. William here is using you to finish where M1 left off, which is likely related to M2, Gregory, etc. And M1 of course wants to prevent that. I'll give an explanation on what I think is actually going on here. In Help 1 and 2, you gather the memory plushies for Afton, his happiest memories, his murders. He likely needs them for a similar reason you need a tiger plush in Secret of the Mimic for M2 and David. He needs it to be whole, to truly come back better than ever in a new body. M1 and Vanny though, seeking to stop this, hijack his plan and use it to defeat Afton and kill off the Glitchtrap virus. However, M1 was just using you to kill Afton and set up the pieces to free M2, so she gets what she wants and throws Afton to the dust, just like Eleanor in the books, leaving us to see what happens in the Rune DLC. Now we move on to a more speculative part of the video, which doesn't contradict anything I've discussed previously, but recontextualizes everything, so let's not waste any time. Let's move right back to Secret of the Mimic's true ending, where M1 walks away with the data driver while M2 remains trapped. M1 has the data driver and does something with it. But what? Well, considering it seems pretty clear that Scott is telling us that Afton/Fazbear does obtain the Mimic schematics and uses them, considering it occurs not only in the Tales books, but we know Fazbear uses them in the modern times in the games, and we can see that Afton does use Mimic technology in the fun times like Funtime Freddy. Afton having the Mimic technology would also explain why the fun times seem to always be sentient before any revenant or souls were put into them. They were Mimic AIs. They were always way more intelligent than other robots. Why does this matter, you may ask? Well, if what I've been saying is true, and M1 and Afton worked together at some point and made a deal, Afton was likely given the schematics, while M1 was promised to be given her son back. This would make a lot of sense and fit a game version of the Afton-Eleanor alliance. We also learn in the storytime ending, and in the cut Edwin ending, where M2 becomes Edwin, that the mimics aren't purely mimicking things they see. They're locked onto a specific persona, seemingly by memories in some way, as you see with the tiger plush, and they truly begin to think they really are that person, but in the mimic body. M1 really thinks they're Fiona's spirit in the mimic body, and M2 thinks they're David in that ending. If that is all accurate, then I think we have a very serious question to ask. If Afton also got the schematics, and that's how mimics work, why would Afton not create his own mimic, locked onto his persona? So if he died or was defeated, this mimic, or M3 you could say, would continue his legacy and even bring him back, as this M3 would really think they are Afton. This could explain some things throughout the series, even in the Scott games. For example, in FNaF 6, Afton says,
"What a deceptive calling. I knew it was a lie the moment I heard it, obviously, but it is intriguing nonetheless. How can I resist a promise such as this?"
Afton here is humoring Henry's plan. He knows it's a trap and he sees no problem. Unless Afton is extremely stupid, this makes no sense if he had no backup plan of his own, and it generally just undermines Henry's entire plan since Afton knows it's a trap. Anyway, Henry, when forming his plan in the Insanity ending, is only talking about the MCI kids and freeing them, nobody else, as if the others were tacked on and not entirely or originally intended to be there. While I could elaborate on this idea further, I'm going to focus it mainly on Afton. So consider this. What if Afton came to FNaF 6 with his own plan? That he was going to hijack Henry's plan for his own. But you may ask, what is his plan? Well, Baby kinda does spell it out.
You played right into our hands. Did you really think that this job just fell out of the sky for you? No. This was a gift for us. You gathered them all together in one place, just like he asked you to. All of those little souls in one place, just for us. A gift. Now we can do what we were created to do, and be complete. I will make you proud, Daddy. Watch, listen, and be full.
Baby here is talking about combining into one. The same thing we did with Ennard in Sis Location. The same thing Afton always wanted to do in every timeline. Afton, and Baby here technically as well, wants to combine everything into one amalgam, like what happens in Frights. They use the fire to amalgamate themselves into presumably the Blob, with Afton being the exception. This makes a lot of sense. The only hurdle in Afton's plan then would have been UCN, something he couldn't have predicted, trapping him in what should be an unending nightmare coma in the FNaF 6 location in his Burntrap body. This could also explain this glitch blob thing, which has 4 eyes but a gaping middle part. The 4 eyes could be the 4 MCI kids, with the missing gap being the 5th kid, the Vengeful Spirit, who is missing because the Vengeful Spirit did UCN and may or may not be resting by this point. To summarize what I am arguing here, Afton knew Henry's plan and he went in with his own plan to win. He hijacked Henry's plan to accomplish his own goal, amalgamating the animatronics while seemingly killing his only enemies. In other words, Afton won in FNaF 6, but was stopped by the vengeful spirit. But you may ask, how does this relate to an Afton in free though? Well, if Afton had made it in free, it would have been locked onto his persona, and after FNaF 6, it would have been activated at some point, perhaps in Help Wanted or earlier. But this in free would think it is Afton. It would share the memories of Afton, just like how M1 has the memories of Fiona. But like M1, it's not a perfect one-to-one copy, explaining why Glitchtrap's more silent behavior and why in special delivery, if that is him, he googles how to induce compliance in human subjects. He's not a perfect one-to-one mimic. And Free then would think like Afton, and Afton of course would know this. He would know that M3 would attempt to reach the Burntrap body and unite with it, because as far as M3 knows, that is his body. So with M1, they paved the way to the FNaF 6 location, and M3 will unite with his body. But if the man Room 1280 tells us anything, Afton's spirit remains in his corpse in the nightmare state. So, when M3 unites to it, it unites Afton's spirit with the AI, truly bringing Afton back for real. But as we know, this doesn't go entirely according to plan. We know from Ruin that the Burntrap ending does happen to some extent. The Tangle is consuming William and now has purple eyes. Afton is likely now possessing the Tangle as a game's version of the Afton amalgamation. Meanwhile, Princess Quest 3 and Balloon World happen, freeing Gregory and Vanessa. This cripples Glitchtrap/M3, leaving the M3 virus isolated with only some of Afton's soul united with it, which makes even more sense of Vanessa's lines. The it is the M3 virus, the she is Fiona, and the his and the him is Afton's soul. You're killing off the Glitchtrap virus, which kills M3 and removes any of Afton's code that remains anywhere, trapping Afton in the Tangle. Help Wanted 2 then is truly the end of Glitchtrap, since you're killing off the Mimic AI that thought it was Afton, leaving just M1 and M2 as the remaining mimics and Afton in the blob, severing his soul from any infected code. I think this makes a lot of sense and is entirely possible with what we know about the mimics and Afton so far in the story. However, I leave it to you. What do you think? Is Glitchtrap Afton and the Mimic? If so, which Mimic? Is Glitchtrap the Mimic AI that Afton made to continue his legacy? Does he successfully bring back Afton as Burntrap? Or was Afton truly gone and M3 was possessing his corpse, and it's all just Mimic AIs LARPing as people? That's up for you to decide. I am interested in this idea I've made, and I'm very excited to see what y'all think. So please leave a comment down below with your thoughts and theories. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more. Big shout out to Solid Silver and Mama Cardo for being the voice actors in today's video. Make sure to check them out as well. The next video will be more book-centric, so stay tuned and see ya.
Remember the agreement. You will not hold him from me.
I am not. The reunion of your family is, of course, of utmost importance. But my work must take priority.
Your code exists because I allow it. Don't forget that, Afton. I am not beholden to your whim.
We will see.